Joining me now to discuss Tammy Bruce, Rich Lowry, and Boyd Matheson. Tammy, I think the stock market said it all. People are taking serious the Freedom Caucus and even moderates who are saying that so far this is a no.
Yeah, and look, this is, though, where Donald Trump comes in as an individual. It seems like he went in with a whole kind of package. Obviously, as you noted, that there's been a lot of changes and amendments that have been made or offered. And then there are effectively the threats. So when he says they're going to have trouble in 2018, he doesn't mean that they're just going to get yelled at. He said also that he's going to be very active with people who've been supportive of the bill. You can read into that he will then go after and be very active against those who don't. And I think that that's a serious threat. When you look at the rally yesterday still, it's unusual to see a rally from a president where he does talk about legislation and what's going to happen on Thursday. And I mean, that's a unique dynamic, and that goes right to the core of the constituencies. So these are threats that not only will you have problems because you will be voted out, but that he will be active in that regard. But the other issue, too, is that the Freedom Caucus has been very consistent in what it is they've been concerned about. And when they say they're not going to vote as a bloc, as they indicated, but when you've got 21 votes, at least I think they understand, too, that there's an art of the deal and that they probably want a little bit more. And I still would expect this to pass on Thursday.
I should note also on Fox News, Representative Dave Brat told Neil that there are potentially 50 votes, 30 conservative votes and 20 moderate votes. And I will point out to folks that earlier today, President Trump said to Mark Meadows, who's in charge of the House Caucus, the Freedom Caucus, he says, I think Mark Meadows will get there too. And then he looked over and said, Mark, I'm coming after you. Yeah. And most people who were in the meeting said it was only a half joke. Yeah. But having said that, think about Dave Brat. He beat Eric Cantor. Right. Eric Cantor was part of that new guard that included Paul Ryan and McCarthy. They were the young guns. Right. They were going to revolutionize Washington, D.C., but quickly, for a lot of people, became part of the establishment. I'm not sure. He's in a position where he's going to vote his conscience versus falling on the sword for President Trump, because I think that's where some of these folks see themselves. How do you see it?
Well, I think they're close to getting this vote. The word is about 9 votes short, and a day and a half out. Usually that's gettable for a House leadership. And Paul Ryan is making the bet that this is a close vote that's going to be more like the close votes that Speaker Pelosi had when she was Speaker, as opposed to the close votes that Boehner had. Pelosi's got through. Why? Because she had a president of her own party behind her, and they really are depending on Trump being the closer, as Ryan has repeatedly said in the last few days. And there's going to be a carrot and a stick. The carrot, some of these provisions you talked about, Charles. The stick is that jocular, but maybe at the end of the day, not very funny threat from Donald Trump to some of these members. You don't want to end up in his Twitter feed, and some of them might be there before the end of Thursday.
Boyd, it's interesting because Rich brings up Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama. One thing that we all kind of noticed, even when that was going through, though, is that some of those Democrats were committing political suicide. You look in the aftermath of the Obama years, and Democrats lost Senate seats, House seats, governorships, all because everyone backed his agenda. And you might have some Republicans who are willing to take the wrath of a Donald Trump, or maybe some who actually hope maybe this could be a blessing in disguise if it doesn't go through on Thursday, and they can go back to the drawing board with him heading it up rather than Paul Ryan.
Yeah, and I think that's what you're going to see. I'm less confident they're going to get this through on Thursday, although it is going to be Washington as usual. There's going to be a lot of fake fights over the next 24 to 48 hours, and then they'll come down with the false choice of you either have to accept this or, grandma's going over the cliff and there's going to be blood in the streets, which is typical of how it goes. No one is talking about this bill in terms of what is in it in terms of health care outcomes. I haven't heard a single member of either party, either end of the political spectrum, who's talking about the merits of the bill in terms of health care outcomes. And I think what's happening is you're seeing that this is starting to drive a wedge between President Trump and some of his most important allies. Some of those Freedom Caucus folks were the first to get on board with him and endorse and support him down the stretch. I also think you've got the leadership. This is really a lack of leadership, not just in the House, but in the Senate as well, where they're trying to cobble this together like they used to do it and just kind of arm arm muscle it through. If Donald Trump really wants to show as president the art of the deal and how to lead, he'd tap the brakes on this thing and say, let's get it right, rather than let's just jam this thing through, which is what we criticized the Democrats for doing 8 years ago, which launched Obamacare.
Substantively, if this bill passes the way it is now, they will spend years trying to fix it and live it down. Politically, though, and this is a dilemma, if it is defeated on Thursday, it'll be an earthquake in the potential kneecapping of the first year of President Trump's term.
But,
I don't think it has to be that dire.
Well, it doesn't. And also, they've set it up in this structure where you also have the expectation of more tweaking. You've got 2 other segments that are supposed to come. So it won't be so much a surprise as it was with Obama,
Tammy,
where
let me
he did
just
more
jump in 1 second, because
rules.
I don't think a lot of Republicans are confident in those other 2 phases, particularly when it comes to the Senate part and the idea of bringing Democrats on board for the key parts that make this more of a that would make it more of a free market deal than it is right now.
Look, I think that there's an honest reason to be concerned about that, but at the same time, there's the key elements that people really do want, that the core constituency out in the street really want, that we understand, and it's going to be people who've supported on the street, not necessarily in Washington, who have Donald Trump's back, who are going to insist on those things happening. I do believe that they can, because Trump is different and he will structure this differently, but we also they almost have to continue to tweak it, because that's what Obama continued to do. They will have to continue to deal with regulations and rules and roll those back, and it's going to be a natural process. They won't be able to keep their hands off of it. It's a matter of making sure that the new things that happen are are beneficial to the nature of what it is we need on the street.
But those 2 phases, the second phase, which is Tom Price acting administratively, is a black box, because they haven't said in any detail what he'd actually do.
But Tom Price has he's written some, he's written repeal and replacements.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
We've got enough on, we know enough that Tom Price is ready to hit the ground running.
There's no doubt his heart's in the right place, but does he have the statutory authority to do this stuff, and would it really make enough of a difference? And then the third prong, which is supposedly getting stuff through the Senate with 60 votes, with 8 Democrats supporting you, is a complete fantasy. So
and right now, 3 Republicans in the Senate are saying no.
Right. So ideally, you just get this bill right from the outset.